I'd like to call the December 19th, 2023 City of Gardner Planning Commission meeting to order. At this time, can we please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will start to my right with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Collins here.
Commissioner Souza here.
Commissioner Ham here.
Commissioner Mader here.
Commissioner Juniman here.
Commissioner Cooper here.
All right, as we have a quorum, I will move on to the consent agenda from the November 2027 meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me start over. Consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the Planning Commission for study. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item for either the Planning Commission or from the floor, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Are there any items any members of the commission would like removed from the consent agenda? All right, no items removed. Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion made by Commissioner Juniman and a second by Commissioner Mader. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion approves the consent agenda, and the motion carries 6-0. All right, moving on. We have 6 items on the regular agenda. Our first item is Gardner Pet Lodge. Project number 23-303-01. Gardner Pet Lodge request is rezoning, conditional use permit, and site plan located at 29852 West 199th Street. Do we have a presentation by staff?
Yes, we do have a presentation.
Okay, thank you.
And good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Again, item number 1, permit 23-303-01 is a rezoning site plan and CUP for Gardner Pet Lodge. The applicant is requesting rezoning to bring the property in line with our city land development code. Currently, the property is zoned RUR, rural, in the county. In the most similar district that we have within the city zoning classification or our land development code is A, agriculture. This rezoning also allows for them to apply for the conditional use permit. If it were to remain RUR, we don't have anything in our code that allows for this type of use. The pet boarding facility is allowed, again, under the agricultural district as a conditional use permit. The staff also felt the petitioner needed to submit a site plan as part of their request for this use. Conditional use permit request is very similar to a plan development, and the request, if granted, will only allow what is presented to the commission tonight. The petitioner will only be allowed to deviate from this request if they bring another petition before the commission. Property was annexed into the city back in 2020, and again, they're requesting a conditional use permit and associated site plan to allow for the pet boarding facility. And again, like I said, mentioned earlier, The pet boarding facility is only allowed under a conditional use permit in the A agricultural district. Subject property is located approximately 1,000 feet west of Gardner Road and 199th Street intersection. It is bound by R1 properties to the east and north, and by RUR zone properties to the west and south. The lot size is approximately 10 acres. Again, this slide shows you the existing zoning that is surrounding this site, with the green being RUR, the yellowish is the R1, and there's a smidgen of multifamily just to the north. The proposed site includes a 3,200 square foot building. The proposed location of the boarding facility is surrounded by existing trees. However, they will be required to, if approved, to provide additional screening along the east side of the building to ensure minimal disruptions to the neighbors. Additional conditions are also listed in the recommended motion. The proposed use complies with the Gardner Land Development Code. The proposed use complies with the City of Gardner Comprehensive Plan and also the voluntary consent annexation agreement that they made between the petitioner and the city. And the conditional use permit review criteria have been addressed by the applicant. These reviews are available within the staff report. Staff recommends the Planning Commission recommend approval of 23-303-01, a rezoning, conditional use permit, and site plan for animal care at 29852 West 199th Street with the conditions provided in the recommended motion.
All right, thank you.
You gonna talk about the letters?
All right, thank you. At this time, this is a public hearing agenda item. I will open the public hearing. At this time, if you are here to comment on this agenda item, I ask you to please step forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes per individual or 7 minutes if you are representing a group.
So, Madam Chair, we'll bring the applicant up first for
Oh,
their
okay.
presentation as part of the public hearing now that it's open. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood the applicant will make their presentation
Okay.
initially, then we'll have the other comments, and I also have a statement regarding the comments that have been received by staff since your packets went out.
Okay, thank you. All right, if the applicant is here and would like to speak, please state your name and address for us.
Hello. Jason Carmen, 29852 West 199th Street. And I think, do we have some slides here, Bob? Perfect. All right, if you can flip to the next one, that'd be great. All right. So first, just kind of wanted to give you guys a feel for what the vision of this services would entail. So it is a pet lodge, but it's not a traditional type of kennel lodge that a lot of us are used to on here. This is more of an interactive type of facility on here. Actively managed on it would include both indoor and outdoor play areas for the pets. So what we're looking to do is really provide kind of spacious individual boarding for each of these pets and ensuring that they are, watched over, getting the attention that they require, getting the exercise and whatnot that they require. If we look around the town here right now, demand for pet lodging services within Gardner is very minimal here currently. It's been estimated, well, this is probably an extremely conservative estimate of what's leaving Gardner here right now at 60%. It's probably closer to 80% because we just don't have facilities here within this town, right? So we're looking to bring in some services here for the community that would allow them to take their pets to closer to home on here. We've also, as you kind of look across Gardner here, hey, we're getting great veterinary clinics in town. We're getting great groomers in town here. We're still missing this lodging capability. And so there's a real opportunity here for these small businesses to kind of leverage and work together, cross promote with each other, and, you know, really kind of increase the, you know, availability of all these services here for our residents. And I think it'd be good not only for the businesses, but also for the residents. You know, so end of the day here, what we're trying to do is really be a community-focused business, strengthen our small businesses that we've got, give back to our community here. We've got kind of an initiative here as we build up our all of our statements of operation here to have charitable contributions here back to the community on here, because that's extremely important to us. And then first and foremost here, providing a service back to the Gardner residents for their pets to be able to have a safe and, you know, healthy environment for them to be at. If you want to flip to the next one. So the reason that we've selected this location, it's actually a fantastic spot here for a services business like this. Like Bob said, we're on a 10-acre plot here. We've identified an area of this that's currently surrounded on the north, the south, and the west with tree lines on it. To the north, it's very heavy tree lines on there. We'll be adding in additional tree coverage here on the east side of things. That should minimize any visibility from any of the neighboring sites. They're not real close to the neighbors anyway, and then also increase any acoustic dampening while the pets are outdoors. The building, you kind of see a rendering of what it's going to look like. It's going to fit in with what's expected in the area here. It's going to look nice, be consistent. Sound has been an extremely important item for us. One, because my family lives on this property, and of course our neighbors, right? We're always concerned with making sure that there's not going to be any noise nuisances in the region. So the building will be fully acoustically insulated on it. We're going to have sound dampening throughout the building on there as well too. It's expected when pets are indoors, you won't be able to hear them outside of our property line on there. Like I mentioned here, facility is going to include indoor and outdoor play areas. Of course, dogs will go outside. They will be grouped in small batches, basically based on temperament, personality, exercise needs, etc. Right? So dogs will be going outside probably in groups of 5 to 10 type of pets at a time to use the outdoor area. Be monitored. You know, let them go out and play. Each evening and overnight, all animals will be lodged indoors. Traffic, just one point on traffic, because traffic's always a concern as well too. For a building of this type with the size and what we're expected to have there, I'm not expecting traffic to be an issue on there. All drop off and pickups will be managed and scheduled by myself. I will be the one that's letting them come in, and I don't want congestion there either because I've got to manage all those. So kind of throughout the day, handful of cars coming in and out, that's scheduled and managed by me. Like I said, sound has been a really important piece on this. So we've done several different types of calculations here based on the location of the facility and where it's going to be at. I said inside, when dogs are inside of this building overnight, it is not expected that there will be any noise nuisance outside of the property line. If you take a look here, this table is showing pretty much every neighboring address that we have on there. During the daytime, like I said, dogs will be going outside. This is kind of a worst case scenario on here, and this assumes that there are no tree lines that are dampening any acoustics on here. So you can see there's kind of a range from 37 to 43 dB is what's expected. You can see over on that kind of, I don't know, chart on the right-hand side. This is from OSHA. What's the equivalent sound perception of that? That is between, it's essentially a soft whisper from 5 feet away. So if you want to know what the folks at their house should hear when dogs are outside, it'll be equivalent to a soft whisper from 3 feet away, okay? And because this is so, such a critical piece, I wanted to take a look and say, hey, absolute worst case scenario, if we had super loud dogs on out here, what would that be perceived at all the neighboring residents? So looked up, the Guinness Book of World Records is a grouping of 76 dogs, which is significantly larger than what we would ever have at this facility. They were recorded at 124 decibels on there. If those dogs were all out in this area at one time, making as much noise as possible on there, you can see what the sound perceived would be at each of the residents on there. And 67, that's in between conversation from 3 feet away and classroom chatter. Like I said, that's a very extreme case, and it's really just kind of saying, hey, there's a reason this location was picked, and it's because it should be a non-issue on there. If you want to scroll down to the next. Here's just another item for a visual representation here of what I expect, kind of how the sound propagation is going to flow through this neighborhood on here. You can see once you get outside of our territory there, that's where the dogs would be at. Before it gets to any of the houses, dogs inside, 0 dB, inaudible. Dogs outside, expected to be at 43.7 dB, which is equivalent to a soft whisper. As you get out farther than that, it's even less. If you look up to the north on there, because we have such heavy tree lines, it's really negligible at that point that we're not expected to have any sound propagation travel over there. Okay. There is this is an important one. So there's a larger but similar facility located in Spring Hill. It's called Mystic Acres. Some of you may be familiar with it. Great facility on there. It's about twice the size of what I'm proposing here. I went out to this facility. My wife and I met with the neighbors out there. I've met with the owner of this facility before too, but went and personally spoke with the neighbors at this just to see if they had any concerns. Because we've been meeting with our neighbors to see, hey, are there concerns? Talk with them, make sure that we address anything, and make sure that we can mitigate any issues that there might be in the neighborhood. These neighbors, so the houses are closer, it's twice as large. They didn't have a bad thing to say about this facility, which was extremely surprising to me. They said, there's no noise or nothing that's a nuisance. There's no smells of any sorts on there. Actually, they were, quite frankly, pretty complimentary of it. So that was a very important data point. Encourage, anybody that has any concerns, I've been encouraging the neighbors, go and talk to these guys as well too, right? Because this is real life case scenario. And that's really all I wanted to share here. I think, if you take a look at this, we need this service in town. I think this is an appropriate location for it. And I think we've done our due diligence in the planning, really, is appropriate and should be considered for approval.
So my name's Angela Carmen. I'm the wife of Jason, so we'll be a part of this business as well. So live at 29852 West 199th Street. I just felt it was important for me to come up here as well and just to state a few words. I'll promise it'll only be just a couple more minutes. So first off, I just want to thank you guys for, especially during this holiday season, for meeting with us and listening to our proposal. So I work from home 100%. I'm on the phone almost every day with important clients, and my first concern as Jason and I started this journey was to ensure that dogs outside would not disturb our surroundings, specifically our neighbors and myself working from home. So we sat down with each neighbor that wanted to see our proposal to address each of their concerns and let them ask any questions that they had of us. We were able to address their concerns. Those that didn't want to talk with us are hearing it for the first time, but we have addressed each and every concern that was brought to our attention. I think Jason went through it pretty well in our presentation. They're very supportive, and you probably received several emails and letters indicating such. But since I work from home, I see and hear what goes on outside my doors. We go for walks around our property almost daily. We might faintly hear a dog or two barking next door, or a pack of coyotes, or roosters crowing, but nothing compares to the traffic noise that goes up and down 199th Street. I'm sure you guys are probably aware. The traffic during the day and at night on 199th and Gardner Road is much louder than what will come from, this tree-lined kennel at the back of our property. The common question that was asked to us is, why do we want to do this? So first, it's been a dream of Jason's to retire from corporate early and do something he loves, something he wakes up every day and looks forward to doing. 2, to provide a much-needed service and contribution to our community. and 3, to give back to our community in more ways than we currently are. So we've been residents of Gardner for coming up on 19 years. Gardner has changed a lot in 19 years since we've been here. Gardner provides more services today than what we remember when we first moved here, but unfortunately it just does not provide that proper kenneling for our furry loved ones. This money is leaving Gardner and going to neighboring towns. So we want to provide this greatly needed service while ensuring that those that live around us will not be negatively impacted. We encourage those that are against this proposal to definitely reach out to the neighbors around Mystic Acres like we did. You'll be encouraged by their feedback. Again, we really appreciate your attention and happy holidays.
Thank you. All right, now we will entertain public comments from the public. As I said, please state your name and address. 3 minutes to speak for an individual and 7 minutes if you are representing a group. Do I have anyone from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Okay.
Good evening.
Okay.
My name is Mary Friend. I live at 19880 South Gardner Road, which is on the corner of 199th and Gardner. The property that is being proposed to have a change to is in a subdivision called Friends and Neighbors. They're estate lots, single-family dwelling, 5 to 10 acres. We have property that is right on the border of that at 19730. It is right on the east side and toward, very close to where the kennels is proposed to be built. The Friends and Neighbors subdivision has always been a very private, single-family neighborhood. The proposed animal care lot, large, will greatly impact all neighbors. It was proposed that there will be 22 dog runs, which would bring traffic in and out for them to pick up their dogs or return them. Excessive light shining on the neighbor's property due to cars in and out, and dogs barking day or night. We are in a rural community that has a lot of deer. It is very common to have 10 to 12 deer in our yard. They travel down through. You can't stop the dogs from barking. That's just their nature. We as neighbors are very much opposed to the rezoning and the conditional use. It is an invasion to our single-family neighborhood, its values, and our privacy. The neighbors that do, if you look at your map that you have, and the people that are within the 100 feet, are ours, which is Ron and Mary Friend, our son, which is Rod Friend. To the north is a development by the Tuscan Farms. I believe you have a letter that you will be reading that I understand that Mr. Bergdorf has prepared and given to your staff. And then the other property is Crystal, I forget Crystal's last name. She's on the west side. We spoke with her. To my knowledge, she's opposing. So that means all properties within 100 feet are not in agreement with this. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If you have any questions.
No.
Okay,
no.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? If the applicant would like to address.
I would just like to correct, I spoke with
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So
Jason?
let's finish out all the public comment, if anyone has one.
Fair enough.
Okay,
And then afterwards, if the applicant wants to speak, you
okay,
can invite that if you want.
okay,
You don't have to do that.
okay, thank you.
Hello, my name's Rod Friend. I live at 29750 West 199th. I have property value and privacy concerns. This proposed driveway is going to be 50 feet from the west side of my house. I do not want dogs barking in my backyard, and I don't want headlights coming up and shining in my back windows. So I am definitely opposed to the rezoning, and I believe the zoning is in place to protect us from this very type of thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Friend. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak on this matter?
So Matt Hamilton, 19785 South Gardner Road. Admittedly, I am outside of the area that was recently discussed. However, I did think it was important to bring up that exactly what Jason was talking about. There isn't a lot of pet boarding services in Gardner. We have one that we go to. We have dogs, we have cats that we need boarded. There's one in the area, and the other one is Mystic Acres. For the times when we can't find somebody, I actually do go to Jason and Angela and get their assistance. So from a point of view of being able to take care of animals and know what or have proper boarding techniques and knowing how to do it, I would like to speak at least and let them know that they do care for the animals and know what they're doing.
All right, thank you.
My name is Ron Friend at 19880 South Gardner Road. I've been a resident of this area for 83 years. And I platted the ground where the subdivision is. That's our name, is Friend. I really hate to see, and I don't know where you find them in the middle of a subdivision, a dog kennel. I mean, I realize they're probably needed, but I don't think they're needed in a subdivision. This is an estate lots. I have a problem with it. I don't really have much more to say. We come into the city of Gardner with the idea that we were getting protected from Edgerton. And we couldn't do what we wanted to on our property. If Edgerton we couldn't sold later on, whatever. But I just wanted you to know that it's been all these years here, and I just hate to see this come into the middle of a good subdivision. Thank you very much.
All right, do I have anyone else that would like to speak? All right, can I have the applicant speak again during the public hearing, or do I need to wait?
You can invite them up if they want to respond to any questions or comments that were made.
Okay, if the applicant would like to respond to any of the comments that were made?
Really just, like Angela mentioned here, hopefully with hearing the presentation here, I know some of the folks that got up here was their first time that got to hear it. I expect that we addressed several of the items that they had commented on because it's similar concerns that other neighbors would have. I'll also comment that the neighbor directly to the west of me has told me that she fully supports this 100% on there, which that was mentioned by Mary that she thought she was in disagreement with it. That she said fully support, and she may have sent in a letter as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, if I have no other public comments, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion made by Commissioner Cooper with a second from Commissioner Mader. All in favor, say aye.
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 Madam, go ahead.
Oh, public hearing is closed.
Stepped
Yes.
on your toes a little bit. Sorry about
That's all right.
that. I just wanted to note for the record, since we closed the public hearing, that you all did receive today, it was at your seats when you came in, 4 communications that staff received regarding this item. Those came in after your packets were delivered and out. So those include all comments up through today that we've had. So there have been 4 different letters there that you have before you. I'll just note that 3 of them were in support, 1 was opposed out of those 4. So you've had an opportunity, hopefully, to review those. If you have questions with those letters, staff will try to help you and assist you there. But they're the communications directly that we received. So.
All right, at this time, the planning commissioners, any discussion? I will start to my right. Commissioner Combs?
Yeah, and I apologize if I missed this. What is the max capacity? Sorry, I addressed that.
So Yeah, complete inside layout is not done yet here, so, but it's expected that maximum would probably be 40 dogs on there. Expected average daily on there's probably 15 to 20. Yep. Should I stay up here? Is there gonna be more questions?
Almost there.
Okay, you might have to
I
bounce
can
up and
pop up
down. All right, thanks. Commissioner Sosa?
I just have a question about that, this, noise study that you showed us. You prepared that yourself, or was it, you had a professional do it, or I was just kind of wondering,
Yeah.
where'd you get that information?
Yeah, so that's, it's, yes, I did. This is with the inverse square law. It's very common with acoustics on there, right, to figure out what sound propagation is gonna be. There's several, like, online studies and things too that I cross-checked. I probably checked 3 different ones just to make sure everything came up the same on it. It's, like I said, it's a very common method to see how loud some, we do it at work as well, yeah. Yep.
Commissioner Maynard?
I do have a couple of questions and just my own, maybe staff can help me out as well. So when I was doing the comparison and trying to understand the zoning where it would fit from like the perspective of, you know, hey, I want to build a kennel such as this. Well, that's in the C3 district, and that's a very intense commercial use, and I'm struggling with putting a C3, that's very intense, into the middle of a residential R1 zoning. That doesn't sit well with me.
So I'm going to explain it on a couple fronts just so that we have clarification. One, just to understand, part of this rezoning request is because when the property was annexed, it was annexed with the county zoning that it had, the RUR.
Correct.
Okay, so that's one thing to just keep in mind when we talk about the rezoning. As part of that analysis as to the type of kennel that was allowed, we do have several different types of boarding kennels in the code.
Correct.
Obviously, right?
The large.
And some are, they're at that large
Right.
peak level.
Mhm.
But also under the A district, this type of facility is allowed as a conditional use permit with those conditions. So you're correct, the intensity, you will see where it's really permitted outright
Right.
is in that higher intensity
Exactly.
district. In this particular case, with this type of kennel, this opportunity does exist in the agricultural district as well, but has to have the conditional use permit to do that. It's not a use permitted by right. Okay, so
Mhm.
you're tracking exactly
Yeah.
right on that. I just wanted to clarify because we don't run into this very often, but with the recent annexations into these areas that the city has had, you may find that we're going to be in this situation where they come in by state law with their county zoning, and that's what triggers the rezoning request on top. And generally, we're looking for rezoning requests that are either equivalent to what the current district is, which is the RUR, or a more intense district, which may be based on whatever that development proposal is. In this case, when we did the analysis, they fit under the idea that it could be an agricultural district, which blocks out a lot of the other uses that we might allow in a more intense district. But at the same time, that conditional use permit allows you all to recommend additional conditions if you want to, or to recommend denial against the permit.
Correct, because yeah, just reading from this is another thing that caught me. Just, you know, reading from the table in the comprehensive plan and zoning districts, where it says the A, RE, or application of these districts, it's to promote open space and rural preservation. So where this doesn't fit, from my perspective of a commissioner, I have a hard time supporting this. One question also then, that's my position on this. But to the plan, it originally said that it was to be a 60 by 40 building, but I think I saw in the applicant's presentation it's actually larger than that. And is that reflective on the site plan that we have? Because those are different.
I do know the applicant referenced in the presentation another location that was a larger facility, correct? The one in Spring Hill. You might want to speak to that, but
Yeah.
the size of the building
Yeah,
you're
I didn't know if
proposing.
this,
So I think on the plan that you have in front of you there, that should be an 80 by 40 building.
okay,
That's
so it's
shown.
just wrong in the staff report.
Mhm.
So it's an 85,
A-
85,
80
80 by
by
40. Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, and then also on the site plan, another question. The installation then of I see where it's the wide concrete commercial entrance, is that then a concrete drive all the way to the building?
Asphalt, I believe, is what.
I guess some
Yeah,
material
so
other
I
than
think-
gravel.
I think the front had to be
for dust
concrete on
mitigation.
there, and then it was gonna be asphalt through the rest of the way back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then,
Commissioner Mader, just to clarify, staff is recommending a condition that the drive be paved from the roadway all the way to the facility as well as parking area. So there is a condition in there regarding hard surface.
a hard surface, okay, there it
Yes,
is.
And
I
it would
see
have to
right
meet
now.
our specs.
Okay, that answers that question. How many employees are being proposed to work at the facility?
It's just a family business,
I'm sorry?
just family business.
So, 2, 3?
Yeah, my wife and I and my kids.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then, I guess maybe staff, this would be a question for you. If this does move forward this evening, will we get more information then on how, like, I think it's in here somewhere about, sorry. Yeah, on number 2. Yeah, on the site plan, provide construction details for an area that addresses the treatment of high bacteria loads and specifications and how waste is being treated. Wouldn't we want to see that as a planning commission?
You can certainly request that as a planning commission if you'd like it. Staff felt it was a fairly technical item that we would be reviewing the technical standards. But certainly if tonight you don't feel comfortable without seeing that, you can certainly go that direction as a commission if you like.
I think it's included on those plans.
Is it?
Not
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah, I think it's
I
up
don't see it.
by, if you look, I think there's a call out on there. I'm not sure which version you've got there, but I assume it's on there. Head towards the creekway, there's a little call out on there that, it's like a washout berm or something.
Well, actually, on the notes, this is wrong then too, because in the notes, I guess the note number 3, it says property owner requests that the existing driveway and proposed driveway be allowed to use gravel rather than paved. But we're saying if we make we can include it in the motion that it needs to be a hard surface. I just don't feel like this is up to date. Unless I'm reading this wrong.
You may have a older version of it, because that was in one of the earlier versions where I had made that request on there.
Yeah, it's not on mine, so that's why I have the questions.
So at the beginning of the process, I believe the proposal was to leave the drive the way it is. Staff is making the recommendation that it be paved. So whether that's shown on the record or not, we're indicating that if you were to go the route of approval, one of the conditions would be that this has to be paved. That's our recommendation to you.
I think those are the questions I have. I just have a hard time with, I think you're absolutely correct. This is 100%, 1,000% needed in the city. But I just don't, I'm struggling with putting it in the middle of residential. I appreciate you guys coming over tonight. Thank you. I think that's all I got for right now.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mader. Commissioner Juniman?
So with the conditional use permit, does that come, it says in the recommendation, I think it's 5 years, it comes up every 5 years, is that, so?
Yes, so currently the recommendation is that this would be for a 5-year period. During that period of time, as with any conditional use permit, if anything in the operation of that changes from what is actually adopted or approved, it would have to come back to be reheard as a separate conditional use permit at that point. So they can't just simply expand the building and continue increasing the business. They would be limited to the parameters of what's being proposed tonight. If they want to expand it, then they have to come back and come in for a revised or an updated permit, and that goes through the review process just like we talked about before. The other part of this is if they are found, if we receive complaints regarding noise, regarding light, regarding any number of things, those complaints are investigated, either by police or whatever, to see if they're in violation. If they're operating in violation of the permit because of that, it causes a revocation action that comes back to the Planning Commission and the City Council for potential revocation of the conditional use permit. So as it stands right now, the recommendation's for a 5-year period, but understand that does not alleviate them from meeting the other ordinances of the city as they operate. They still have to operate under those nuisance codes and other property maintenance codes like anybody else in the city.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Chenoweth. Commissioner Cooper?
So I have a question. Is the 5 years something that you guys,
So
Or is
part
that
of it is
part of
looking
the
back at
regulation?
past conditional use permits. There's not a lot that are exactly this type, but just looking at it from the standpoint of the investment of the individual in the facility, what they're proposing to do, it was felt that it was consistent to recommend a 5-year period. Now, if the commission wants to shorten that period, lengthen that period, put parameters on it, like we've done with other ones where we've done the administrative reviews annually, that's certainly up to you to discuss. And if we want to go that way, we can revise those conditions to meet that. So at this point, it was felt that a 5-year kind of recommendation from us was relatively consistent with past things that have happened like this for this type of conditional use permit.
the other question I have is why are you recommending pavement versus asphalt versus a gravel driveway?
So the city has requirements regarding all driveways and parking areas within the community. The only ones that we allow to be gravel currently, and they have to come before the Planning Commission and the City Council to request that, are outdoor display areas. So like when Olathe RV was being considered for their expansion, they had the ability to request the use of gravel for their items here. When we're intensifying uses on a parcel of property, we look at the current code and we try to bring things up into the compliance with those regulations. So we require that all drives and all parking areas that are serving, whether it's a residential use, commercial use, all be paved with a hard surface right now, and that's what our code says.
To me, that seems to elevate it to more of a commercial use than a rural environment. Is there a reason that we're doing that in an agricultural?
I would tell you that even if we had a new house being built on this property that didn't exist, they would be required to have the paved drive. So we're not looking at it from the standpoint of intensifying the use, we're looking at it from the standpoint of it's basically a requirement that you have those areas paved.
Okay. Circling back to what one of the residents said that they were with Mr. Rodfran said that he's within 100 feet of the driveway for the proposed applicant.
50 feet, yeah.
Yes, okay. So, seeing as though this is a family-owned business, what are the operating hours? Like, so we're looking at cars pulling into the driveway, light pollution to the surrounding neighbors.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I mean, we're probably talking 5 cars a day, right? Typical, like I said, it's a handful of cars that are coming in and out of there, which I can schedule pickup and drop off times, right? That's what we'll be doing. Normal operating hours will be normal business hours, really. Will I allow for folks to come in, later if they're coming back from vacation or something? Yeah, I probably will, right? On kind of, situations as they arise on there, but I would expect that typically it's a handful of cars that would come in, during normal day throughout the day. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so.
Yep, thanks.
We need a discussion on how we feel. I'm leaning towards Commissioner Mader's concerns with this.
I just feel it's too intense. That's,
I have a question.
trying to wrap my
Question-
arms
question.
around it.
So in the recommendations, you mentioned, you recommend providing visual screening from adjacent properties along the east side of the proposed facility, which I believe is what we were just talking about, that light pollution with the 50 feet away from the drive. Would that be trees? Is that a structure of some kind of fence? What are we talking about there? Do we know? Or do we have a proposal?
So the recommendation that staff made is primarily about the visual screening of the building. It was not intended to address the drive. If you feel like that visual screening would need to be adjusted, that can be incorporated into the motion as a condition or an add-on to the condition. It's there, however you see fit there. If you feel that that's something that you want to do, is have that visual screening through vegetation, you could put that on as a condition as well.
I mean, if we were going to approve it, I think we should, just because, you know, if we talk about drive-throughs and stuff that are near a main boulevard or road, we put visual screening if there's a drive-through that's opposing traffic so that it's not distracting drivers. I think that might be something that could apply here, especially that's a pretty long drive, you know, shining into somebody's backyard. I think that might make sense to, if we were to approve, to make sure we get some visual screening along that entire path.
And I do want to make a comment, Commissioner Juneman, just very quickly so that everybody in the audience understands. And I know you all say when you're talking about this, we sometimes forget to understand that the Planning Commission on these items is recommending one way or another. The governing body is the one who will be the final decision maker on this. So I want to make sure when we talk about approving, what we're really talking about is a recommendation of approval so that the audience members understand that, because this will go forward to the City Council to be heard as well. So when we're talking about all of these items, those recommendations become important, so you have that ability to formulate those conditions and that flexibility as we move forward. And they can be different than what staff is providing you, so just be aware of that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so I like Commissioner Juneman's recommendation. I also like Commissioner Cooper's recommendation, or the comments you made about why 5 years. I don't know if, like, how can we do that? Like lessen.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can change the years on that. You could make it 10 years, you could make it 1 year. That's up to you. That's something that you guys should talk through and discuss of what makes sense. I mean, you're balancing then the burden of somebody having to face this getting rejected in a short period of time, and then is it worth them doing it versus the community that they wanted for several years. So have that conversation. I do want to hit also on just, and I'm going to address, like Commissioner Maders talked about, you know, this is a permitted by right in C3. Makes total sense. I just want you guys to be aware of the fact that there's a conditional use permit. It's in the code there for a reason. So if the city's never going to allow it, then it shouldn't be in the code or it wouldn't be in the code. So that's worth some, I guess, some thought for you all. For example, small bed and breakfast daycare facilities also only allowed in residential with a conditional use permit, allowed by right in commercial. So this is where you guys are in a tougher position under conditional use permits as opposed to more, it's less of an up-down consideration. So I just want to make sure there's a lot of enough thought on that of not do these always fit in residential, but does this fit in this residential, does it fit in this any district?
Yes, Commissioner Cooper.
So one of my concerns about paving the entire driveway is if it's a conditional use permit, then that driveway is there forever, whether they continue to use this as a boarding facility or not. And that seems like a very large expense to me for something that's gonna be a conditional use at this point. And I don't understand, there's probably more to this that I don't know about the code.
So
But it just seems like if it's a conditional use, is there that hard, fast rule that it has to be paved even if it's a conditional use?
So I think we also need to, or what you all need to take into consideration on this is the investment in the building. So it's not just about the use of the building, but a building that's 80 by 40 in stature
Yeah.
may be utilized for a variety of different vehicular activities, whether it's vehicle storage, whether it has to do with farm implements, whether it has to do with any number of things. So the reality of it is once the building is built, that's kind of the driving force for there's going to be traffic back and forth on this route. Now the parking area would be the area where I would sit there yes, the parking area is associated with clients stopping, dropping off their dogs and doing things, where if an individual is using the 80 by 40 structure more for their personal equipment or storage or hobbies or mechanical elements that they've got there, you know, you wouldn't have that parking area per se, but you'd have a drive that goes into that entry area to cover that traffic coming in and out. So that would be the part about the drive, that whether
So-
the use goes there or not, it's really kind of the structure that drives it.
So are you saying that the parking area doesn't have to be paved, but the driveway does?
No, by code, the parking area should be paved,
Both?
yes.
So that just confused me.
All right, so, we can either table this to think on it more until the next meeting, or we can entertain a motion.
Sorry, missed your comment.
Oh,
Did
I
you have a
said we
question
could
or-
either table this until next meeting to think about this more, give us some time to mull over it, or entertain a motion.
And I would say, if you desire to table this till your next meeting at this point, staff would certainly be interested, I'm sure the applicant in that. If there are certain topics you'd like us to look at in more detail, you know, like the paved drive and other things, we can certainly do that during that period of time and bring that back to you as part of the reporting process at that point. So if you choose to go that route, if you're leaning towards certain conditions, it would be good to kind of know that so we can investigate what that would be. That also gives the applicant the opportunity to maybe revise their application if they feel comfortable doing that. So I would say any guidance you can provide as part of that, if you choose to go the tabling motion, would be appreciated both by staff, by the applicant, and also by the neighbors at that point.
Well, maybe this will help, because I agree. So I used to live on South Moonlight, and when it gets dark and, you know, things are quiet, it's quiet. And one of the individual concerns that I had was certainly with the noise. Looking at some conditions around the business hours, taking into account that the neighboring group are, you know, for and against. I feel like looking at additional details around that, at least reducing in some manner the CUP, because we don't know what the success is gonna look like. I wish certainly you the best of success as we navigate through this process. I might, as I speak out loud, listening to the team here. Noise, to your point, certainly the reduction of the permit, I believe that's important to me as I hear, you know, the neighbors and the folks. So tabling with unique conditions, I think is a fair approach.
I could be supportive of the tabling, along with understanding more about the details to address the treatment of high bacteria loads and specifications on how waste is being treated, because there's a pond right next to the facility. So I really need to, I mean, it looks like it's a shared pond between their residents and the Wises to the west. I can't be quite for certain what I saw in Ames, but that's what it looked like. So and again, I'm really challenging to give this my go, because it is a very intense use in a very, very residential area. I could go with a tabling motion to look at this again with some more details. And I also do agree with the reduction of the conditional use permit period. Looking at that, and as far as the drive, I think it needs to be a hard surface, just to mitigate dust. That it is a long drive, and Mr. Friend is very close to that drive, so I can really understand that aspect. Those are some of my thoughts. If we were to, I'd have to deny this tonight. I either deny or table. I just can't. I can't move forward with it as it is today.
Okay. Well, I will entertain a oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna hold you up on this because
Okay.
I do wanna make sure that we are on the same grounds too. This is actually an item that requires two motions. So one of the motions is the rezoning piece of this. One of the motions is the conditional use site plan piece of this. So be aware of that. What you've been focused on is the conditional use permit and the site plan aspect of this. So that's where I'm kind of, in my mind, that's where I'm anticipating, if you're going to make the tabling motion, it's there. Now, the rezoning motion, you can table that to hold until you see these details if you'd like as well. I just want to let you know it's going to require two motions,
Absolutely.
one on the rezoning piece, one on the other. The reason they're separated is to understand, as this property came in from the county to the city, it retained that county zoning RUR. Now that it's in the city jurisdiction, bringing it to an equivalent zoning district is important to the city as well, because that then allows us to utilize that jurisdiction of our land development code in that process. Otherwise, we're trying to fit things into county regulations that may or may not change. We have to deal with the county on those kinds of things as we do that. So the issue is, for comfort, you may want to table both these items, but I do want you to understand the rezoning isn't granting the conditional use permit.
Correct.
The zoning is simply saying we're recommending approval of that change from the RUR to the city equivalent A district, but it does not give the approval to the conditional use permit because that's a separate action.
So are both items then public hearing items? So like
Yes,
if
that's
we-
why
so
we
if we
combine.
approve this rezoning,
Right,
it'll still
so
be a
what-
public hearing.
Right,
notice.
so what we do is when we have situations like that, because generally the public doesn't always understand the separation, we advertise it as a combined public hearing so that we're hearing all of the comments at the same time. They're so closely related because they're usually use oriented and have to do with that. So the idea is for the public to understand, this is their opportunity to hold a formal public hearing to speak on whether they want to talk about the rezoning, the conditional use permit vote. It's up to them, but it simplifies the process. Otherwise, we would open up two separate public hearings. You might get comments in one that really aren't applicable to the rezoning. We'd have to tell people, no, you have to wait on that. So it's a management process to make sure we capture all the public comments essentially.
So could we make a motion to approve the rezoning so that it comes into
I'm
the
gonna table.
city?
I
Don't
can't-
table-
I would.
Table
yeah.
all of it?
Yep.
Okay.
If you prefer to package it, and I would probably say for simplicity's sake, you're better off tabling on both. That's my professional advice on this, because otherwise what would happen is if you make a recommendation for approval or denial on the rezoning, it's going to the city council in January. It would not be back here. So procedurally, it would move forward, but then you would have the conditional use permit on a different staggered timeline. So
Okay.
for simplicity's sake, it may be easier to keep them packaged and tabled.
Why would we want to rezone that area if we're not gonna allow them to go forward with that dog kennel? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, where it helps the city, and I'll just say from the city's perspective, getting it to the equivalent city zoning is helpful to the city when it comes to jurisdictional matters on zoning issues and the enforcement of the land development code. Otherwise, we're trying to enforce the county regulations, and that becomes problematic. And so that's where, for the city, we would love that when annexations occur, that the zoning would change at the time of annexation. And the way some cities have done this in other jurisdictions, other states, and that is that they're allowed to bring it into the city equivalent at that time. In Kansas, we are not allowed to do that. It has to be a petition that either comes from the property owner to get to that equivalent zoning, or it's something that the city proactively pursues the rezoning. We tend to be very passive about forcing a rezoning on property owners, so we tend to be a little more passive with that. But when we have opportunities like this, no matter what the issue is, if they're intensifying the use of the property, that's the opportunity for the city to say, we've got to get you in the city zoning district and we need to follow those jurisdictional rules. So I agree with what you're saying, Commissioner Cooper, but I just want to make sure people understand that from our standpoint, it's much easier than from the standpoint of enforcement and jurisdiction of the rules of the city on properties in the city, that they are under the city's LDC. So, but that doesn't change what I'm talking about for the tabling. I just wanted to
under any conditions, we would define those here this evening, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, and again, those would be recommended. So what you've done, as far as I know at this point, what I'm hearing from the commission is you'd like to see more details about the visual screening of the driveway, things like that along that drive, that would help with the light or potential light pollution that's there. You'd also like us to look at potential of a smaller or shorter timeline on the actual conditional use permit and what we would recommend there. Further details on the waste situation there and what's going on from that standpoint to make sure you have that information in front of you. And those are the big ones that I captured from your conversations.
I think I'm correct, but I think Commissioner Mader also said something about operational hours for the business.
Want clarification?
Yeah, just some clarification on
Okay.
that. I think we had a little bit of clarification with the applicant, but just to maybe see a little bit more in writing.
Okay.
And I would also like to know, like, contingency plans on if, since it is family-owned and it's run by 2 people and children, like, if something happens and there's, like, they're out of commission or something like that, and then there's an influx of people, like, what happens, like a contingency plan?
So you all have not really gotten to deal with conditional use permits very much here, which is very fortunate for you in many ways. But a conditional use permit runs with the property, but
Okay.
also runs with the applicant. So it's
Okay.
a little bit, like when you grant zoning, it runs with the property, there's no question about it. That zoning is given, those rights are out, no matter who buys the property in the future or what happens.
Right.
With a conditional use permit, it's set up to run with that operation that you're looking at today. Now, I still think it's a valid question if you're concerned about contingency plans, about how this operates if something happens. But I will say, generally, if there's a transfer of ownership or there's a transfer, a sale of the property, a sale of the business, the way it's managed, that makes it subject to having to come for another conditional use permit, the old one now, because you have new people operating. It was issued to this original applicant, it runs with them. If they go and decide they're moving off to some other place and they wanna sell the property, they can't just simply sell the business and turn over the conditional use permit to them. Those people would have to come back to the city to get approval again, or have it reissued to them essentially.
Okay. All right, well, if we're.
Let me ask. What I was asking the city legal advisor here was, if you're leaning towards a tabling motion and you're wanting to package it, we can entertain a motion that basically states that you're tabling both the rezoning and the conditional use action for tonight to the January meeting, and we can go with that. And the January meeting is, I believe, January 22nd. I think that's right.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion, on this, agenda item.
I can make that motion.
Okay.
The regular agenda item number 1, Gardner Pet Lodge 23-303-01, which is a rezoning site plan and conditional use permit. After discussion at the December 19, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, the recommendation is for a table of these 3 items until the January meeting to be held on January 22nd, 2024.
All right, I have a motion presented by Commissioner Mader. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, with a second by Commissioner Sousa.
Can
All
I
in,
ask for clarification? Did you say 3 items?
Yeah, it's a rezoning site plan and the conditional use permit.
She's including all.
I'm including all 3 of them.
The site plan's associated
Okay.
with the conditional use permit.
Got it.
Okay.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, I have and a approval of a recommended motion. All right.
And for the people in the audience, what the action that the planning commission has taken, just so everybody understands this, both the applicant and folks here, that being tabled till January 22nd, understand the public hearing has been opened, it has been closed, so there's no obligation to open to further public comment on January 22nd. But certainly the public, the applicant, if they're interested in proceedings and the discussion, should be present at that meeting as well. So I just want to make sure everybody understands where we are kind of administratively with that.
Okay. All right.
So this will be back before you on your January 22nd meeting at 7 o'clock here in these chambers.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, proceeding on to agenda item number 2, which is HTO. HTO project number 23-304-10. Request for rezoning, a preliminary development plan and final development plan located at 838 East Main Street. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, we do. The applicant is requesting rezoning from C2 General Business District to CP2 Planned General Business District with an associated preliminary development plan and final development plan for the HTO business. The subject property is approximately 0.8 acres in size and is located on the north side of Main Street, just west of the intersection of Main Street and Moonlight Road. The parcel was platted back in 2020 along with the old Price Chopper to the north. It is located within 1 mile of the New Century Airport and so is required to go to their meeting for approval as well. It is surrounded by C2 commercial zoning to the north, east, and west, and to the south by the Main Street and BNSF Railroad right-of-way. There are existing utility easements on the northern half of the site with gas, water, electric, and sanitary sewer lines running through it. These greatly constrict the size and location of a potential building on the site and create a challenging parcel to develop. The applicant is proposing a 2,100 square foot building with drive-through service on the south facade, and the building will be located outside of the utility easements. Here are the building elevations. You can see the southern side on the lower right-hand corner of the screen has a service window and then some other transparency. There are 5 deviation requests. The first is to allow a drive-through service window facing Main Street. They have provided additional landscape along that Main Street to block the headlights from vehicles within the drive-through lane. The second request is for the transparency also facing Main Street. The standard is for 50%. They are proposing just that service window and then the other few windows you saw there. And based on franchise design, having significant transparency on both the northern side with the primary pedestrian entrance and the southern side with the service window is difficult to achieve. The third request is a deviation from the 10-foot wide sidewalk along building facades with a primary entrance. This would be on the northern side of the building. They are proposing a 6-foot width. Due to the lack of room to increase that width to the 10 feet, the site plan could not comply with this code section. However, all sidewalks will still meet ADA standards. Deviation request 4 is also unable to comply. This is for the foundation plantings. Typically, they're 8 feet deep and along 25% of the street-facing facade. Because of that drive-through and the constraints of the site, they're proposing landscape where that buffer is in that area instead. The fifth deviation request is for the monument sign. It is currently proposed on the southwestern corner of the site. It would be 10 feet from the, or actually I think 12 feet from the property line. Staff recommends increasing that setback to 15 feet and granting a deviation for the area of that monument sign to be 56 square feet. This would no longer require the deviation increase that they requested from the 6 foot to 8 foot, because if you look at the standard, for every additional 5 feet they're set back, they get 2 feet additional height. Staff finds the site does not interfere with utility operations, and the site is capable of accommodating the building, use, and other site design elements. The landscape provides adequate screening to permit a street-facing drive-through. Increasing the monument sign setback reduces the deviation request needed, and if the deviations are granted, the plan is in substantial compliance with the code. Staff recommends approval of application 23-304-10, a rezoning and associated preliminary development plan and final development plan for HTO with the conditions in the recommended motions. Similarly to Gardner Pet Lodge, there are 2 recommended motions. The first is for the rezoning and preliminary development plan, which you make a recommendation for and the governing body makes the final decision on. And the second is for just the final development plan, which you make the final decision for. Condition 1 of this suggested motion is so that the final development plan is not approved unless the governing body approved the earlier recommended motion, which is the rezoning and PDP. This is needed since both of these are being heard at this meeting. And I do want to make one quick suggestion or comment. Your packet, I think the very first part of this wording, I did notice like a few changes that needed to be made. I think I included the FDP in this language, and it should just be the rezoning and the preliminary development plan.
All right, thank you. At this time, if the applicant is present and would like to speak, please state your name and address.
Thank you, Commissioners. Judd Clausen with Phelps Engineering, 1270 North Winchester, Olathe, Kansas, serving as civil engineer and surveyors for the project. With me tonight is Mr. Mark Martinez and his family. Mark is would be the owner of this business and franchisee for HTO. This is a new QSR that's coming to the Kansas City market. It's pretty large all over Texas and Oklahoma, some in the, I think, Wichita area. But this will be one of the first locations in the Kansas City market. And it's really all things tea, over 24 different flavors of sweet and regular teas, and they're pretty excited about this store being here. As Jesse alluded to, pretty challenging, tight site. It's cut up by a lot of easements on the north side of the site with utilities and stuff, so it really dictated what we can and can't do with the layout of the building. And we normally are trying to be totally compliant, if not, very few set requests for deviations. These are absolutely necessary to make this thing work, because we've kind of really wrangled our brains trying to make how this could work, provide the adequate stacking so that we have plenty of stacking for the drive-through bays and the parking to make this work. Added more than minimum landscaping as part of that offset for not having the plantings up next to the building, but putting it along the south perimeter and the east and the west sides. So we really tried to make up things there. So our client is agreeable to the stipulations, including moving the sign back, as staff had suggested, and we're all here to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for the applicant at this moment, or no? Okay. All right. At this time, I will I will open it up to public. This is a public hearing agenda item. If you are here to speak on this matter, please state your name, address. You have 3 minutes for an individual, 7 minutes if you are representing a group. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this matter?
Hello, I'm Zachary Hills at 713 East Dogwood Street here in Gardner. And I just wanted to voice my excitement for this business coming here to Gardner. It's fantastic tea, and it's a unique business that brings you out to see it, especially in that area. It'd be nice to have a business like this bringing people to the center of Gardner in a way that I like more than even going to a brewery. It's exciting to see Gardner grow in this way too. I've been here for a couple of years, and it would be definite exciting point for staying here too into the future. So I also want to say that I know that the owner would keep it in the greatest condition, and a very trustable manager as well. So that's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Juniman and a second by Commissioner Cooper. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that brings the public hearing to a close. Do we have any discussions from commissioners? This time I'll start at this end. I'll let you off the hook. Commissioner Cooper, do you have anything?
So now I'm on the hot seat.
I thought I'd give Commissioner Combs a break.
I have a question for Jesse. You said something about the signage. Could you cover that again? Because I didn't understand.
Right. So the monument sign standard, if they were to meet it, would be for a 6-foot high monument sign set back 10 feet from the property line with a maximum square footage of 25 feet. We measure just the kind of the wording or the the logos of the monument sign. That's why it's such a small amount. They are requesting 8-foot high, or an 8-foot height, and 56 square feet of the monument sign area as our code would measure it. So our code standard, though, allows the farther back you are from the property line, the more height you get and more area you get. You have an additional 2 feet of height and an additional 10 feet in square footage for every 5-foot setback. So right now they're set back 12 feet. We are proposing 15 feet, which would take away the 8-foot. It would meet that without a deviation. The deviation 5 would just be for that square foot area. And I believe in your packet you did get a printout of what that sign would look like.
So how does that compare to the other signage that's on that street for the businesses that are?
Most of them appeared to be around 6 feet height, and the area would be, I mean, if you removed the cup, it'd probably be pretty similar.
So the most of the signs that are in there are closer to the 10-foot setback than what was being recommended here at 15 feet. So they are generally tighter up to there. If you look at the Walgreens sign, the Quick Trip sign, the monument sign that is for the shopping center and stuff, you'll notice they're up pretty close in there, and they're at that 10-foot. They're basically at the minimum setback, and their square footages are roughly compatible or comparable. The monument sign for the shopping center is probably the largest of those three, just in height and also in width and square footage on that. But this would be, by pushing it back to 2 feet, we don't have really concerns about the square footage of the sign because it's roughly equivalent. It's further back, so you don't feel like it's crowding the sidewalk.
I'm thinking of aesthetics. How's it gonna look
Yeah.
compared
They are required to do landscaping around it, so there will be plantings that are around that sign. So it won't be just a standalone sign that's just sitting in the turf area. There is some landscaping that's required along that.
But in comparison to the other signage on that street, I'm thinking about aesthetics in terms of how that's gonna present to as a visual.
Yeah, staff's comfortable with pushing it back. We had those concerns with it up forward, closer. That's when we started going, yeah, this is gonna be perceived as a larger sign, closer to the roadway, and we were concerned more with those types of aesthetics at that point. We feel that the 15 feet gives us that further setback that feels more comfortable in that sense. So I think actually the aesthetics of the signs may be better than some of what we've got out there. Now, Quick Trip sign is relatively new, and it's a fairly nice monument sign. The Walgreens sign has a reader board component to it, which is good and bad for various reasons. And then the monument sign, if you look at the one for the shopping center, it's a little more aged, and aesthetically, I would say it's not in as good condition as the other signs in the area. It's probably in the worst condition. I'm not gonna say it's falling apart, there's nothing to that extent, but it is not in the same condition as the Quick Trip and Walgreens.
All right, Commissioner Juneman.
I didn't have any questions or comments about that application.
Commissioner Maynard?
No questions, comments.
All right, Commissioner Sosa.
I just want to say that I'm excited about the new business. It's going to be the first in the Kansas City area. I think it's good for Gardner.
Commissioner Combs?
When I saw the deviation, I admittedly started with a negative thought, but the packet explained and design does out really well, and I appreciate it. So, no questions.
Okay.
And I want to reiterate two things very quickly. One, on the landscaping, I know the deviation, the foundation plantings and things like that sometimes are issues. I know Commissioner Mader, we've seen this in other situations. But I will say that the proposal for their perimeter landscaping and what they're trying to do to visually buffer things, that's what a lot of people that are driving along the Main Street highway there, Highway 56, that's what they're going to see more of. And so we felt that the trade-off was equal to or better because of the additional landscaping there. So, and if you had questions about, I was anticipating Commissioner Juneman having questions regarding utilities. So I'll just, so that people understand, our utilities that are out there, obviously we don't want buildings built in those easements. We don't want buildings too close to those easements so that if we have to excavate, it creates a problem for the foundation of the building, things like that. So this was reviewed by our utilities groups as well as Public Works. They felt comfortable with the distances. They do allow for parking pavement over the tops of those utilities. So I just, in case there was that question, I didn't know if Commissioner Juneman was going to ask that civil background. But I did want to clarify that in case this is a tight site for a variety of reasons.
I was, and I'll be brief. Thank you for pointing it out. Actually, that visual was quite intriguing, at least in my own thought process, because what other applicant might be able to build or provide some business there. So thank you for pointing that out.
All right, if there are no further questions, I will entertain a motion for this agenda item.
And you'll have two motions on
Two
this,
motions.
so you know. So the
Two
first one,
motions.
as Jesse had pointed out, is for the zoning and the preliminary development plan, and then you'll have a follow-up with the final development plan. And understand, this is a recommendation to the city council on the preliminary and rezoning. The other one is a decision on the final, but that decision is still contingent on the city council's approval of the rezoning and the preliminary development plan. So just be aware of that.
Okay, so do I need to request two separate motions on them? Okay, so first I will entertain a motion for the rezoning.
I'll make that motion. After review of application 23-304-10 rezoning and associated preliminary development plan for HTO, if I got that right, and staff report dated December 13, 2023, the Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the applications as proposed, provided the following conditions are met, items 1 through 3 in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, I have a Motion made by Commissioner Mader with a second by Commissioner Juniman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Next, the preliminary development plan. I will entertain, the final development plan. I will entertain a motion for that.
I'll make that motion. After review of application 23-304-10, final development plan for HTO and staff report dated December 13th, 2023, Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided the following conditions are met, and those conditions are set forth in the minutes of the proposal by the board. Do you want me to read those in, or is that?
You can say the conditions as proposed.
The 3 conditions as proposed in the staff report.
Second.
All right, I have a motion made by Commissioner Cooper with a second by Commissioner Sosa. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0.
And for those in the audience, the rezoning and the preliminary development plan will go to the city council on Tuesday, January 16th. Council meeting's on Tuesday because of Martin Luther King Day on the 15th, so it got shifted to the 16th. So just want to make sure people note that that item will go forward to the city council at that time.
All right. Okay, item agenda number 3. We have project number 23-303-02, Lone Star Prairie, with a request for rezoning, preliminary development plan, and preliminary plats. And do I have a staff presentation?
You do. Good evening.
Hi.
So, item 3, the applicant is requesting rezoning from County RUR, which is that rural agriculture district, to RP2, planned 2-family residential district, with an associated preliminary development plan and preliminary plat. The property was annexed into the city this year and is largely undeveloped agricultural. It does, however, have approximately 10 oil wells on it. Before each phase of the development, they would have to be removed according to the regulations set by the Kansas State Department of Health and Environment. It is surrounded by that county RUR zoning, and the St. John's neighborhood is at the northeast corner, zoned R1. I will also mention Gardner Municipal Airport is to the east. There is one parcel dividing the two. The applicant is proposing 191 single-family lots. Due to them being 50 feet wide, they are considered detached house neighborhood, and the R2 zoning district is therefore necessary. The zoning and lot sizes are similar to the meadows portion of Prairie Trace and to the Cypress Creek development. It will have 3 phases, beginning in the northeast third section of it and finishing out towards the southern end. Public Works has concerns with the eastern roadway that you can see runs almost completely straight in a north-south way or a line. They have requested that the applicant add a cul-de-sac or other measures to prevent future traffic from utilizing it in a collector street function. So what they're concerned with to the south, if there's development that happens there, they don't want them going on along this eastern road to get up to 175th Street. The first deviation request is for the suburban block length. The standard is 1,000 feet. The applicant, the longest one is 1,350 feet. And so for the developer to meet this, a third stub street would have to have been added to the east, and that is unnecessary because of the Gardner Municipal Airport runway protection zone. So we thought 2 stub streets were sufficient on that side. The second request would allow for a 20-foot wide driveway for each lot at the right-of-way. The standard is that 15% at the lot line, and so with the small width of the lots, that allows a very narrow driveway width. The third deviation request goes hand in hand with that, and that's for the hardscape. The 45% the applicant believes would be enough to have that 2-car wide driveway in the front yard. The fourth deviation request is to allow a sidewalk from the front door to the driveway, as it is typical for suburban houses. The code requires that 4 foot from the front entry feature straight to the sidewalk, and most developers don't want to have a 2-car wide driveway and that 4-foot sidewalk, so they just go straight to the driveway. Staff is supportive of those 4 deviations. The fifth deviation request is for increased garage door limits, so the size of the garage doors. Since this application is at the preliminary stage, no building elevations have been submitted. The standard is for 25% of the facade width, so if you had a 40-foot wide house, it'd be 10 feet wide. The applicant has requested 80%, and staff is not supportive of that amount. Typically with other developments, we have seen, I believe the Cypress Creek was 45%. Staff requests that deviation 5 is not currently granted, and instead the applicant wait until the final development plan to request this deviation. This way it can be more accurately determined what percentage of the building facades will be needed. Staff finds the plan is in general compliance with the Land Development Code. It provides access points for adjacent properties and does not deter any existing or future development on adjacent lots. It achieves the code intent to minimize the number of lots accessing collector streets, and the applicant must provide a solution to deter future through traffic along the Eastern Street with agreements with Public Works. Staff recommends approval of application 23-303-02, a rezoning and associated preliminary development plan and preliminary plat for Lone Star Prairie with the conditions in the recommended motion.
All right, thank you. At this time, this is a public, oh, I'm sorry, the applicant. Is the applicant with us? Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, I'm Ben Gasper with SMH Consultants, 7212 Hadley Street, Overland Park. Commissioners, thanks for having us here and listening to this presentation. We are the civil engineering firm on behalf of Circle H Developers. We have Roman and Dagan Hayden here to answer any development questions, and I'm here as well to answer any technical questions. As I mentioned, we're looking at 191 single-family homes to provide smaller lots, but more entry-level homes into the city of Gardner. There are a few deviation requests we asked. Most of them are standard. I think we agree with the 80% garage facade. I don't think we will be asking for that eventually. I think they're still looking for one single builder for all the houses, and so once we have that for the final plat, I think we will have a better idea of what that facade percentage would be, or garage facade percentage would be, rather than the 80%. So, Roman and Dagan, if you guys have any comments, feel free.
Thank you very much. I'm Roman Hahn. I'm based out of Flower Mound, Texas. I'm with Circle H Land Development, and I appreciate you giving us some time here today. But yes, that our intent was solely what Ben said. Is I'm from Kansas. I live in Texas now, but I'm born in Kansas, raised in Kansas, and live in Texas, and intend to move back to this area as we continue to develop the land here. But the purpose is to find an area that is underserved in a way that I once was when I lived here 25 years ago, and so I think the smaller lots, as we looked at what was available in the Gardner area, we saw a lot of the more standard 70-foot lots, and we wanted to provide an alternative for those, $600 to $1 million homes, and to provide people an opportunity to buy a home in a more starter type of $300,000, $400,000 range, and we feel like these size of lots will enable a builder to do that and deliver those types of homes to the community. So we will, with regard to the final deviation about the 80%, we don't have an answer to that. We intend to comply with that, but we just haven't locked down the builders that will build the vertical structures on these properties. And so we're talking to several builders now, but we'll have more clarity around that as we finalize those agreements, and we'll be able to answer that deviation much more clearly than what we can now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing agenda item. So right now, if there's anyone that would like to speak on this, I welcome you to the front.
Terry Simpson, 17540 Four Corners Road. I guess the concern is about three things. I believe the city has bought up property for the north-south runway just because of the airport, and now we're thinking about building houses on the east-west runway. I'm kind of lost there. Second of all, where does the sewers come into play in this project? And number three is water. I don't know if any of these council people have been up down 175th Street from Osage to Waverly with the half-inch rain we had and the water that stands there already. Like, know where all the water's going. 191 houses, that's a lot of pavement. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item?
My name's Krista Wilson. My address is 16240 Edgerton Road in Edgerton. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Gordon Land LLC, which are the owners of the property at 32665 West 175th Street, which is adjacent to the proposed development. The LLC is owned by the 4 children of Eldon and Audrey Gordon, who purchased the property in 1942. Prior to this move, the Gordon family were farmers in the Prairie Center community since the late 1860s, and were forced to move in 1942 due to the building of the Sunflower Ordnance Plant on the Prairie Center site. Since 1942, the Gordon family has watched the city of Gardner continue to expand toward the farm and knew that the day was coming when housing developments would become a reality. The LLC members are aware of progress and development and know that this kind of expansion is inevitable. They are also very supportive of property owner rights and understand that it is the prerogative of the owner to dream, design, and develop their property as they see fit. This is not the kind of development we would like to see in this area, obviously. 5 generations of our family have farmed on this particular piece of land, and farming is the livelihood of several family members currently. When you live in the country, there are certain aspects of the quality of life that you expect and enjoy. Clear views of fields and sunsets, quiet evenings sitting on the porch, and a general sense of privacy. These will no longer be the case, which saddens us. With the building of this subdivision, this area will no longer be the country. Developments of this type proposed could impact the Gordon property and its ability to be maintained as a farm. The LLC members have concerns about the juxtaposition of urban subdivisions with our farm. The parcel of land is a fully functional farm with cropland and the potential for livestock, and there are no plans for changing its usage in the near future. There are just aspects of farming that residents might not enjoy, such as crop debris during harvest, dust, and noise from farm equipment. Farms are known for a variety of sights, sounds, and smells that urban residents are likely not to appreciate. It will always be our intention to be good neighbors, but there are bound to be complaints from residents, which we've already experienced from other developments within the city. The LLC would like to make all parties aware of the situation and hope that they prepare for this with future residents and that there is a plan in place to address these without causing issues for the farm and the LLC. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? All right, thank you. Please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Greg Luffman, and I reside at 32665 West 175th Street. And I currently operate and farm the property that is immediately east of the proposed development. I've been blessed to grow up as a part of the operation of this family farm and to carry on the rich heritage of farming that it represents. I am deeply saddened by the proposition of this new housing development and the threat to this heritage it represents. I am also very concerned that my future neighbors of the farm will not appreciate or respect the heritage contained in this 120 acres of ground that are contained in this part of the farm. My hope is that as things potentially move forward, that an attitude of respect will be fostered within construction crews and future residents toward the farm. As the farm will do its best to reasonably be respectful, understanding, and neighborly alongside whatever happens next to it in the future, my request is that the farm will also be treated with respect, understanding, and in a neighborly fashion in return. As any construction occurs, I ask that the property lines of the farm be respected, and that if there is any need to cross over into it during this time, that I am communicated with so that I am aware of what is going on. I also ask that the footprint of these potential intrusions be limited as much as possible. The quality of the soil is the farmer's greatest asset, and the more it is driven and compacted on, the harder it is to produce a viable crop. I didn't receive this courtesy this past spring, as those inspecting the property, as well as survey crews, drove and walked where they wanted to on this private property without any communication of what was going on. I also would like to emphasize, and it's already been mentioned, what it will be like living next to the farm for those who aren't accustomed to it. Crops will be grown and cared for, and these crops will be rotated so that the same crop isn't grown every year. This will change the scenery, as one year may be tall corn, and the next may be shorter soybeans or wheat. There are large, loud machines that will do the work, and they may begin the day very early in the morning or continue late into the night, depending on the season and the need for the operation being done. There will be crop care products carefully applied to the crops to protect them and allow them to flourish. Some of these products may leave an odor in the air for a period of time after they are applied. Dirty and dusty conditions will occur, especially when it is windy and after harvest is completed. The residue from the crops will blow in the wind and potentially end up in neighboring yards and around houses. And I would also like to ask for consideration to be made for the protection of the public. There are many alluring draws, especially for children and teenagers on the farm. What's to keep them from coming along, getting injured, damaging my product, my equipment, things like that. I'd just like to ask for consideration for that. I'm fully aware that my words probably will have little impact on what ultimately happens with this development. My main objective is to bring considerations toward what happens between the collision of farms and urban development. I have lived in the area the majority of my life, and I have witnessed and have been affected by this collision. As stated before, my main desire is for mutual respect and understanding between neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gloria Leffman, 32965 West 175th Street. We have lived and owned our little homestead right at the corner of this development that is being proposed. We face 175th Street and we're right on the west side of this. It's listed on your maps as the John Leffman Trust, so that's our property. Over the years, there's been lots of people that have approached us and said, if you ever feel like you want to sell your place, let us know. This is what everybody wants, this little small acreage with a house and in the country. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that anymore. I don't think there's going to be list of people saying, oh, we really want to buy your little house that's backed up to 197 other houses. Also, just as a parting shot, there's, according to the map, there's I think it's 6 houses that will be backed up right to our property. I think I'll be investing in some blackout curtains for my bedrooms, so thank you.
Thank you.
William Willis, 17795 Four Corners, Gardner. If you don't mind, I'm going to read from my notes. Might be a little more clarity there. First, for your information, I live on 10 acres. I have a large, or about a 1 acre pond behind on my property. This pond is fed by water from 175th Street ravine and from a ravine that extends down from the low spots on the property being discussed. I know there's a detention pond or 2 that are supposed to be built on that. I don't know what the runoff is going to be or where that runoff water is going to go to when we have heavy rains and it's full already. I believe there's one on the east side that could hinder the farm property and the crops there. And the one on my side, on the west side, if it has runoff that goes down that ravine, it's going to cause contaminants from these homes and any oils and things that are on the roads up there. And with those retention ponds, or detention ponds, like you see down on 186th and Gardner Road, get very green and algae covered a lot of times, especially in the summertime. When algae is on this and we get heavy rains and it enters my pond and field, it could possibly cause damage to my pond environment and the use of my pond, which my kids and grandkids and other people also use. Algae could, if it was heavy algae, could cause fish kills because of the depletion of oxygen within the pond and possibly damage the hayfield that I have during heavy rains. When the dirt starts moving up there, or when they start taking out the oil wells and injection wells with piping and stuff, hopefully they take out the piping, there's a good possibility of the oils and the injection pipes leaking and leaking into my pond down that ravine if it's raining. I've had that happen with the D&Z folks just on the other side of my property line. My property line east property line is 825 feet, give or take a few inches from the west side of the property spoken about. I don't know how this can be addressed, or it has been addressed with the, is there a possibility that this this water or this from detention pond is going to be into the stormwater runoff? I don't know. Just a quick note on your section, LDC section 17.03.030D, on paragraph D, states any impacts identified by specific studies or technical reports, including preliminary review of stormwater, are mitigated with generally accepted and sound planning, and so on. I haven't seen any surveys taken by anybody. I haven't seen any results of anything being studied that what would cause damage to my pond and on down through the creek that goes down to another pond and on down the way. Hasn't been any environmental studies done to see what kind of damage is going to be to the crop fields and ponds and hay fields and things like that. Secondly, I'd like to just briefly note and second Mr. Simpson's comment about the buying of the properties for the runways at the airport. And now you're going to put a concentrated, you're buying these up, the city is, on the ends of your runways, and now on the end of this east-west runway, you can put a concentration of homes right in line with that. The plan with this concentration of homes and duplexes doesn't fit the character of the adjacent neighborhoods of farms and crops. It'd be a better fit if it was designed with less homes, more green space. And I know that it's requested to be RP2. Homes on the north side of the state are, I think they're RP1 or single family residences. The one main thing I have is I think that these homes the ability of these homes, the concentration should be more limited, maybe reduced by 15 to 25%, and take out the RP, or take out the duplexes that are on the main road of 175th Street, which would cause a lot more traffic concerns. Thank you.
Thank anyone else that would like to speak? All right, seeing as there is no one else that would like to come forward, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion made by Commissioner Mader with a second by Commissioner Juniman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing is closed. At this time, are there any comments, questions from the commissioners? Go back down this way to you, Commissioner Combs.
Yes, so thank you. When I saw that the oil wells were planning to be removed, I had some of the similar concerns that one of the
Can you
residents.
speak up so we can hear you?
Excuse me, sorry. My concern is uniquely to removing the oil wells and the components, of course, not really understanding what is involved in removing an oil well. Can someone maybe explain to me how that's removed, cleaned up?
We might ask the applicant to come up on that particular item. I do know that they have to follow certain state procedures for capping those wells and dealing with those situations, but I think I'll let Ben talk to that.
Yeah, as far as the wells goes, I believe as part of their contract with buying the property, whenever they go to close those wells, the existing property owners that owned those wells have to go through and close those per KDHE and per EPA, and have to go through certain testing to make sure there's no leaks or anything like that, per both KDHE and the EPA.
And may I address or ask a question? So maybe help elaborate just a little bit. This is education for me. So when you say cap and then I hear remove, are those synonymous? Are they two different aspects of the process? Could you help me understand that?
Yeah, so I'm just strictly civil engineering, so I don't know the full process of this. I do know it is per contract, seasoned professionals do come out and I believe remove the wells, or at least get them to a level that the Kansas Department of Health requires, as well as the EPA requires.
Okay. And final question, just for clarity, you said that is the old or previous property owner's responsibility? And then ultimately there would be some inspection before acquisition or finalization? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Sousa?
I had a similar question, and he answered, so,
Okay,
thank you.
Commissioner Maynard?
Yeah, a couple of things. I personally wasn't comfortable with the long block deviation request of exceeding the maximum. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but I know there's a couple of streets in town that remind me of what I'm seeing here, and they're raceways. And I don't feel they're safe. That doesn't set well with me. I had a question on that, and then I wasn't comfortable with that deviation, I should say. And then also where there was the condition here within the suggested motion that it must meet the requirements of the Title 14 floodplain and stormwater management with all therein. I'm not going to read that word for word. But with those findings, could that then potentially change what we're looking at? So I don't feel comfortable doing anything with this because it could change.
So it's a two-step process, and again, the applicant's engineer can talk a little bit to this, but essentially at preliminary plan stage, what is required is that there's a demonstration that the stormwater will be met in some way on the site plan, whether detention facilities, whatever they are proposing, and that there's usually some base calculation work that's done with that. Public Works reviews that. So what's shown on your site plan is initially reviewed through the engineers on our staff. The applicant's engineer works on meeting those parameters, but they are required at the final plan to have a final stormwater report that finalizes all those numbers and gets into the details. So the intent at preliminary is they should have enough land set aside for that detention facility, but the actual configuration of it or actual depth of it, and that may change based on that final development plan. But they should be showing you a relatively close representation of what's going to be required that would not require any further enhancement from that standpoint. So part of that is because the final stormwater reports generally have a model run and some other things, and I'll let you speak to those
Yeah,
things.
and we have done a preliminary stormwater report, and it has been submitted to Gardner and reviewed. You know, we have run high-level models for this development, and we do have the necessary 10% green space, as well as we are addressing all the stormwater concerns. We will not be increasing any post-development stormwater runoff, and we will also be addressing all the post-construction BMPs, which essentially it makes sure that based off the Gardner's code, we have to clean the water before it's released again back off-site. So there's different areas within the site with vegetated swales, proposed rain garden, native vegetation, extended detention, that it will hopefully reduce the sediment, you know, before it's released off-site. And so that all that is a high-level plan for this. And yes, the shapes and depths and things may change, but this will generally be what it's going to look like.
So I'm going to add a little bit to that. I want to make sure this condition number 2, as you're seeing the long wording with Public Works, because of the requirements of the best management practices, which is the water quality piece, as well as the water quantity piece, because those details are becoming more and more stringent, just like sanitary sewer, just like a lot of other things. Public Works is suggesting now that on any of these planned developments, you're going to likely see this condition to reinforce the fact that they've got to meet all of those requirements in the practice of this. And we understand the preliminary step is really that high level look. It should be reasonably thought that this is going to be there, and they have to prove that. But then the final one is where we really get into the nitty gritty details of saying, okay, how's this BMP actually designed and what is it doing? So on your final development plan, when it comes back to you, you'll see those kinds of details, and the technical aspect of the final stormwater report will set that up. It's the same with the streamway corridor protections and things like that that are going on. But I will tell you this, condition 2, you're going to see this on probably most of our development plans that come through, no matter what the level of analysis has been at the preliminary stage. Public Works wants to send a clear message that stormwater has to be dealt with the right way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let's see, I think that was it. I don't know, I have mixed feelings when it comes to this level of density. I feel like these lots are tinky tiny, some of them. I'm like, wow. I struggle with that. And this Raceway Street, that scares the living daylights out of me.
And to address the street, we are and have been in talks with Public Works and Engineering to, you know, mitigate any concerns. We're still open to looking at other options to rearrange those streets to make sure that it's not a raceway.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily cul-de-sac, but rearranging and making some curves in there to help mitigate that. It's also been talked about even adding potential mini roundabouts at those intersections to slow traffic down.
Slow traffic down, right, yeah. Absolutely.
I will say Public Works has been comfortable with the exchange of communication on these items with the applicant. It hasn't been resolved, but there has been exchanges back and forth on potential ideas for mitigating that concern as well. That's what condition 3 is really about on this one.
Okay. And then just one more question back to a public comment regarding the proximity of this, I'll say density of development near the airport. What is the findings there? Has there been any input?
So Public Works, obviously they manage the airport.
Right.
So they're our primary source on this information. They have looked at this from the standpoint of the RPZ, which is the area that is restricted where no development is allowed to occur by the FAA, things like that. So part of this will be the RPZ does not come into this property. It stays east. It's primarily on airport property, and I think a small fringe on the adjacent property. I think it's roughly in that area around those property boundaries. But that's where the RPZ exists. From that point forward, and in this development, because of the proximity of the airport, they will have to file some forms with the FAA that indicate elevations and anticipated hazards, if you will, to see if it meets the FAA requirements. So they're going to have to provide that documentation as part of the final development plan as well. And they already know that. We've made So at this point, the concerns, what I've been told with, from Public Works is that if the FAA provides its clearance, they don't see a problem with the RPZ. Now, the airport master plan also shows the potential of that runway shifting to the south at some point if it's reconstructed. That's all dependent on funding. It may or may not happen. I just bring that up to understand that when Public Works is looking at it, they're looking at it from the standpoint of what exists there today and also what the master plan is, but that is very dependent on FAA or federal funding to match. We generally match monies with them, otherwise we're not gonna be able to do those projects. So you do have that element here. I want to make sure too, and I'm gonna ask the applicant's engineer to address this briefly. I know that there was a previous iteration of the plan that was showing duplexes on the north end of this. I believe that has changed.
Yeah,
I want to address that.
Yes, the duplexes have been removed. This is fully single-family homes. There was originally duplexes up along the frontage of 175th Street, and I think the developers are in agreement to remove those and just place single-family homes up there for now.
So that's what the plan before you reflects the single-family lots, not, and I wanted to make sure it was clear because one of the people that spoke indicated that it sounded like they had seen one of those plans or had discussions about the duplexes being there, but the plan that's before you does not include that duplex development. The other clarification, I want to make sure that everybody understands, because we go through this with planned districts all the time. You all are familiar with this. This is partially for the audience's edification, and that is the RP2, it's a planned district. Understand that what the planned district means is they're locking into the development plan that's being proposed so that they cannot do or swap out single-family homes for duplexes or swap out those for other types of buildings that are allowed. The plan that comes forward as a final development plan will lay that out, and that's what they're limited by. The development plan becomes the jurisdictional plan, if you will, for the LDC on land use. So that's where the limit will come into play on that. So I just wanted to clarify that. I get that question all the time in council, and I have to reiterate it for them. So I wanted, with the people that are in the audience, I want to make sure I let them know about that too. This is not just R2 zoning, which allows some of the other uses. This is a development plan, so they're locked into that development plan.
And I'm pretty sure this may be another question or clarification from some of the other commissioners, because we also heard, perhaps some type of screening with the homes that are super close to other homes, and I'm believing that would be seen at the final development plan.
It can be.
That,
yes. So-
where that would come up for discussion, I should say. This is
technically-
not the time for that.
Right, so
Okay.
technically at this point,
clarity.
and I'm gonna turn to Bob for a second, because he's been involved in the landscape side more than I have, because he's here before me, so. But as I understand it right now, we do not in our code have a screening requirement. We don't have a buffer requirement between agricultural and single-family uses and even the more rural residential uses. So there's not a screening requirement like you might have with a commercial to residential or an industrial to residential. So I want to make sure that you understand that part. Did you want to expand on that or? Sure, you can do it. You don't even have to get over this one.
Dave's correct. In between ag, R1 and R2, there are no screening requirements as part of the land development code. It's only when you start getting to more intensive uses,
Okay.
such as the garden apartments or the apartment complexes, where you're going to require those screening.
Okay.
Now, based on tonight's conversation, the developer may come back with the final plan and recommend some kind of landscaping or some type of screening or visual buffering as part of that. But if that's a concern of the Planning Commission now, that you want to make that a condition of this, we can certainly do that as part of your recommendation. If you want to wait and see how that final plan looks, you can certainly make that a condition of the final plan at that point too. So by not addressing it here doesn't necessarily mean that you're saying, yeah, go ahead without it. I think you're raising the concern. If you have an expectation that you want to see something there, the applicant should be listening to that tonight.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I think it would be nice to see. And again, I just go back to that, the one deviation that I'm just not comfortable with is the long block length. Yeah, okay, I think I've said enough.
Okay,
Questions?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner Maynard. All right, Commissioner Juniman.
Yeah, again, same concerns about the long street and just, I think it's just a challenge of the site and the arrangement that it's in. Again, I'd like to see some more traffic calming elements in there. Question for Dave, like you mentioned the mini roundabouts or traffic circles or something like that. If we recommend approval of this and, and back and forth, you guys decide that's an option you want to do, does that trigger a significant change to the preliminary
No,
plan
it
that
would
come back
not.
to us?
It would not be a significant change. The condition number 3 is kind of covering us on that eastern road and some of this traffic calming. The applicant's very aware through the conversation with Public Works staff. I believe the Public Works staff has even talked about the traffic calming on the western road and things like that. So there's been an ongoing exchange trying to get to a solution that works for everybody there. It's kind of like, it's part of the reason we don't want to necessarily lock into quote unquote a cul-de-sac solution. There may be some other road configuration that Public Works sits there and says, okay, you've addressed our concerns on this. So we want to continue that conversation here. Again, what I'm going to reinforce for the applicant to hear is that there is still concern stated by you all as Planning Commission members regarding this block length, regarding what's going on. And before that final comes before us, they're going to need to have a solution that you all are comfortable with. Just by endorsing what's here in front of you, these conditions, this conversation sets the tone that there may be expectations that some of these things are getting addressed appropriately, or at least to your satisfaction. Because again, on final development plan, you're not recommending at that point, you're the final decision makers on that one. So.
Thank you for that. Another point of clarification from the engineer, there was a comment about wet retention basin versus a dry detention basin. Can you clarify on the site what types of ponds these would be?
Yeah, currently we are proposing 2 dry detention basins, and they will be the extended dry detention basins, which essentially holds the water just a little bit longer to make sure all the sediment kind of clears out, so then it kind of cleans the water before it is released.
I will also say that the airport will have concerns with wet detention.
Yeah.
In proximity to air operations, the attraction of waterfowl, things like that. So that'll influence it. Just like when the Johnson County Airport reviews development proposals around that airport in the city, that is one of their concerns that they're trying to watch out for, is that it's not promoting wildlife habitation that is going to interfere with the operations. Now, there will still be wildlife, there will still be fowl that will come into this area, but the idea is not to promote that.
I will say we're also looking at other options for kind of the northeast detention basin at infiltration basins. One of the issues with the site is it is a very clay soil, so it doesn't infiltrate very well, so it's hard for us to get that water to infiltrate. So we're waiting on the geotech report to confirm some things, but we are looking at other options to maybe hopefully have that water infiltrate back down into the ground rather than just dumping it to neighboring properties.
One more question, I guess, Dave, regarding the lot size, is this comparable to the development that is going in north of the high school?
Yes.
As far as lot size? And
Yes, so Jesse alluded to this, the 50-foot lot width, okay, which really predicates the RP2 zoning because of the type of lot size and the type of development, is equivalent to the lot widths that you're seeing at Cypress Creek, which is north of the high school there. So that 50-foot width is there, and also in the Prairie Trace development, there are 50-foot lots in that development. Now that's got mixed lot sizes. There's areas that are 70-foot, there's areas that are 50-foot, so on and so forth. So it's a little bit different there. The reason why staff is comfortable, like with the drive access, is the deviations being requested are deviations that were previously or would be consistent with previous approvals to those developments. So we felt that as being a comfortable deviation request. Where we got hung up, and I'm going to tell you it's me that's primarily hung up on this, when we got to the garage with deviations and things, elevations and design details at the 50-foot width level become more and more critical. Lately, we've been getting requests for 40-foot wide lots, which makes it even more critical about certain arrangements, and we're reaching that point where we want to be very concerned about what those front elevations really look like and how they are perceived by the public along that roadway, because when we get that level of close proximity of the houses along a street block, obviously we have things in the code that prevent repetitiveness. We don't want the same building elevation, house after house after house after house, so we have some requirements there. But yet, when you have all those garage facades and everything facing there at 50 feet, there's some other elements that architecturally have to be there to visually make that look right. At 40 feet, it even becomes more critical. So I will tell you, we are getting very concerned about the 40-foot items that are being asked of us. This is at 50 foot. This is something that's similar to Cypress Creek. So if you've driven that, or you've driven out in the Grotto area, that's a similar lot size with the same drive dimension with that 20-foot drive on a 50-foot lot. So that's similar to what this is. So we felt comfortable with that.
Okay, that makes sense. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but just the support for the vegetation barrier next to the existing homes, I think would be a good idea. But I don't know if I'm fully there making a requirement in those.
Agreed.
That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Jimmerman. Commissioner Cooper?
I have a question. With regard to the plat, it says tract B proposed community amenity. Is that a structure in this plan? What is that? Do we know? Do we have
So there's nothing officially planned yet, but as part, they do want to offer some type of amenity in this area, whether it be a playground, it's been discussed, a dog park, or just a trail going in that area. I think once we get to the final development plan, that'll be more clear. And as well as when we have, more elevations and see what the community neighborhood looks like, we'll have a clearer picture of what that is. But we are planning something in that area.
That touched on my other question. I know there's a comprehensive plan for the Johnson County and the trail system. Does the trail system come into?
I believe it goes
I don't
west.
think it does in this particular area. Yes, what Parks Department is engaged in our review process, so if they had concerns about that, they usually bring that comment forward and then it's incorporated into the plan. In this case, I don't believe Parks Department just made any comments in that regard, so I think we're fairly safe to say that the Johnson County plan, which we're trying to link into with our trails, in this situation, that would not be a problem or an issue for this site. It's east of this, so it's.
But there is some potential for some recreational trails in this development.
Yeah, there are sidewalks proposed on both sides of the streets, so there should be plenty of walkability. And then, there are looking at some sort of trail possibly, or park, or something in that green space to provide an amenity to the subdivision.
But it would primarily serve the subdivision because it would not necessarily be tied to a Johnson County network, other than maybe by the path or sidewalk along 175th Street or something else.
My 2 cents, I agree with all the questions, comments that my fellow commissioners have had. So thank you for entertaining us and answering all of our questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I will say, just on behalf of Roman, we are committed to, working with city staff to doing whatever is necessary to mitigate those concerns. I know if there's concerns tonight, and we've been in touch with everyone at the city that, has been involved with this, so we are looking at, continuing those discussions to help what we can do.
All right, I think I speak for my fellow commissioners when I say thank you, and we
Yep.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, unless
Madam
there's any
Chair,
other-
I'm just I want to touch on a couple things I heard the public say, just so we have an understanding of that. There was one item that asked about sewers and sanitary
Oh,
sewers.
yes.
The way the plan currently operates, this would be sewered by connecting basically to a trunk line that is along one of the tributaries of Kill Creek, so it actually they're gonna have to run a sewer line from this development back to the north up to that, so they're gonna have to also probably put in a lift station to make that happen, or possibly a series of lift stations at that point. So it is planned for sanitary sewers. They've been working with our sanitary sewer utility to find a solution for that. At the same time, what they're trying to do with the design is the initial aspect may be to flow that to a lift station that brings it up there. But if development continues occurring around this and to the south, the design should be so that it can also gravity flow into additional sewage that would be with other development at those adjacent properties. So understand that's part of the design solution, is to sit there and go, okay, we need this to work ultimately as a gravity flow system. But as this is built in phases and as it comes online, it may be pumping back towards the Cave Creek tributary that's actually north of the airport, about, maybe a quarter mile or a little less than a quarter mile north of the airport. But that's at the developer's cost. Those items are associated with that. So I did want to mention that. I think I had put down water, but I think the citizen was talking about stormwater. I believe, and Ben, you might want to address this, that the water right now, it looks like it's going to be from rural water 7, is that correct?
Currently, it's, Rural Water 7 District.
So it would not be with the city of Gardner water, but it would be coming from rural water 7. This is in the rural water 7 service area. Generally, what has happened in the past with rural water 7, there's agreements made to trade out service areas and things like that. In this case, rural water 7 has made indication that they're not willing to swap out service area, that they prefer to serve this area versus having the city of Gardner serve it. So that developer's been working actually with both utility entities to see
Yes.
what the ultimate solution is going to be. But I wanted to also address that.
Thank you.
I think it was mentioned about stormwater along 175th. As part of this development, we do dedicate an additional chunk of right-of-way along 175th. So if ever in the future, when they go to upgrade that road out there, that right-of-way is already dedicated, and essentially the ditch will probably be improved in that area in front of the subdivision.
And I think as mentioned earlier, stormwater-wise, the detention facilities are required to detain the additional runoff that would be coming from the development. So they have to look at pre-development and post-development conditions, and the intent of the drainage is to hold that post-development condition under certain storm requirements. And I see my civil engineer over here nodding, so I know I can keep talking. But as I go through that process, they need to meet those requirements to hold that so it doesn't add additional drainage and runoff onto those roads or adjacent properties. So I think I'm fairly safe space with that.
All right, if there is no,
I actually, a couple other, I'll try to be brief. And this may be a little too premature, but is there a project timeline? I know you identified that, I think, starting in the northeast, I believe I heard accurately. Just, again, in general, is there a project timeline for completion of
Sure.
what we've seen so far?
I think every project is ASAP, right? No, no, but realistically, I think we're kind of holding off to see what happens tonight to make sure the community supports us. After that, I think we'd move into looking at phase 1 and hopefully submitting some phase 1 documents to the city for initial review, Q1 of 2024. So either probably March timeframe, March or April. And then from there, it takes, another 3 or 4 months before get approved for construction. So probably summertime construction goal.
And I'm sorry, I meant obviously after we go through the phases in the process, but are we looking at a 20-year project timeline before all 191 homes are complete, a 10-year, 5-year, or in general, has that even been identified?
I think it has been identified. Roman can talk to it, but I believe the intent would be to keep building.
And again, these are projected, but if everything goes with the plan that's in place and we can meet the commitments here and the community and others, it'll be, as Ben said, start moving dirt in, say, June, July of 24, 7 months from now, and then pretty much about every 6 months after that would be a phase. So phase 1 would take 6 months, phase 2, so that'd be a good rough number for you to use. So once we break ground, it'd be an 18-month kind of to the end. So
No,
hope
perfect.
Hope that helps.
And no, it does. It's a very difficult question to answer,
It-
so
it-
early in the process. But the only other comment that I had, and I don't want to skip over the citizen's comment regarding private property. I'm not sure if there are property markers or some identifiers, and obviously it's different, on acreage compared to a 50-foot lot.
Right.
But what is your team going to do, have done maybe in the past, to coexist, of course, with the residents that you're building within?
No, I'm glad you actually brought that up because I didn't get an opportunity to address the public's comments, and I really wanted to because they are of deep value to me. Speaking of the farm, coexisting with the farming that's been there for generations, and the value of being able to maintain the life that they've created over the last 100 years or many more than that. I grew up on farms in western Kansas, and so I have a lot of respect and appreciation for that lifestyle. That's the lifestyle I grew up until I moved here. So I was in that environment for 18 years. So I value that, I respect that, and I can assure you I will be here, managing it on a day-to-day basis when this project is moving. And, especially for our immediate neighbors, I want to make sure that they have direct access to me, just in case there is something that happens, that I have the ability to address it with contractors or surveyors or who may have, infringed on their property or maybe their lifestyle. So it's something that's valuable to me because it's how I grew up, and so I understand why they value it so much, and I'll be here to make sure that if things like that do happen, that I'll address it because it's something that's really important to me as well.
Thank you, and it sounds like it may have already had to some degree.
That's what I heard. It's
So-
the first I heard, and so as I wanted them to have a way to communicate. If in fact, there's only three neighbors and so it shouldn't be that hard for us to be able to communicate through a process like this. And as things like this happen, we address them as they happen instead of later.
Of course. Well, thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the question.
I am.
Okay. All right. With that being said, I will entertain a motion for the rezoning and associated preliminary development plan for Lone Star Prairie.
I can make that motion. After review of application 23 dash,
Quick question.
Oh, yes.
Yes, did we do
Yes.
that?
Yeah, we closed it.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep,
Yes.
we closed it.
That was a robust conversation.
Yeah.
We closed it. Okay, after review of application 23-303-02, rezoning and associated preliminary development plan and preliminary plat for Lone Star Prairie, and staff report dated December 13, 2023, the Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the applications as proposed, provided the following conditions are met, and I'm going to modify number 1, approval of deviations 2, 3, and 4 as presented in the staff report, item number 2 and item number 3 as wrote within the staff report for today's meeting date of December 19, 2023.
And I think just to remind the commissioners, the deviation number 1 was referring to the block length deviation requested. So that's the one that you're removing.
Yeah,
from-
I'm removing that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just so it's clear.
All right. I have a first by Commissioner Mader. I'll entertain a second.
I'll second that.
All right. A second by Commissioner Juniman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. All right.
And I'm going to, for the audience, just members here, those items, or this item will go to the city council again on January 16th at 7 p.m. That's a Tuesday, not Monday, because of Martin Luther King holiday. So January 16th is when this will appear for city council consideration.
All right. Regular agenda, item number 4, Claire Crossing. Item number 23-304-08, a rezoning preliminary development plan and preliminary plat located at the southeast corner of the intersection of 175th Street and Clare Road.
So, Madam Chair, I do want to indicate that earlier today, we had a communication from the applicant. They're requesting to table this item until the next Planning Commission meeting. I will tell you, I believe I've kind of communicated this to you prior to the meeting, but I want to make sure the public understands. There were some issues that came up with some of the easements, specifically the Evergy easements on the property, and they need to coordinate with Evergy on some items there that might create redesign of some of these components, so it was felt that they were better off tabling this till January, with the intent that they hopefully can rectify those situations versus potentially hearing this item and then finding out that they're gonna make significant changes and having to come back with a revised plan at a later date. So that's the reason why they have requested the tabling. What I would advise you is to see if there are people here who want to be heard tonight on this item, because they may not be able to make the next planning commission meeting. If you have somebody there, we could certainly open up the public hearing to do that, or we can delay the public hearing until the next meeting as well on this item. So either way, but I would say you might just see if there's people in the audience who wish to speak on the item. If we're not seeing any, we can go right to a table motion if you're comfortable with that.
Okay, all right. At this time, we will open a public hearing for item number 4, Clare Crossing. If there is anyone here that would like to speak on that and be heard, even though the item will not be discussed tonight. All right, seeing as that there is no one present to speak on that, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I think we're
So,
tabling the whole.
yeah, rather than close the public hearing,
Oh.
let's just continue the public hearing until
Okay,
that way, public can come in and comment then.
okay. All right, then I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until our January 22nd, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
I've got a first by Commissioner Cooper
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Combs. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. All right.
Do we, oh, Madam Chair, do we need to make a motion to table the item now? We just continued. Okay, all right.
Good point of
Okay.
order.
Thank you.
Just thought I'd, and I can go ahead and make that motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for regular agenda item number 4, Clare Crossing 23-304-08, rezoning, preliminary development plan, and preliminary plat with continued public hearing be tabled until the January 22nd, 2024 meeting, Planning Commission meeting.
All right, I have a motion made by Commissioner Maynor. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Sosa. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 6-0. All right, next item on the agenda, regular agenda item number 5, Gardner Public Utilities. Item number 23-306-01, a site plan located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Energy Center Drive and East Santa Fe Street.
And Madam Chair, before the staff makes its recommendation, I will let you know that if we get close to 10 o'clock, we do have to entertain a motion to extend the meeting due to the way our bylaws are written. So I just wanted to let people know that, so.
All right, speed it up, fast forward. Yes, that's true, yeah.
All right, item 5 is a request for the Planning Commission to hear a site plan application for Gardner Public Utilities. The site is currently used by them and includes the current buildings that they are utilizing today. It is located off of East Santa Fe Street and New Energy Drive. And you can see here it's near the intersection of Highway 56. And this is kind of located just to the south of New Century Airport. It is 7.5 acres in area total, and the site plan proposes a new building on the unbuilt portion in the south. This property is platted. However, you can see on the southwest portion there's a chunk that's not included. It's 0.7 acres in area, And that was sold off at some point in the past, and so the plat doesn't currently reflect that, so they will need to replat to show it. They can do it administratively, and so we have that as a condition of approval. They're working on that currently. The proposed building is 13,400 square feet in area, but it could be expanded in the future on that northeastern section. There's a box there for additional vehicle service bays and a portion to the west for covered area for outdoor vehicle storage as well. The current phase, though, is the area where you can see the building has that hatch at the borders. It is designed to allow city trucks to enter from the north around the current building and then drive straight through to exit south at the drive along East Santa Fe Street. That access point at the bottom of the screen is within the standard separation distance of the nearest driveway to the west. So typically Public Works has these certain feet between each drives along major roads. It is within that, but Public Works is comfortable with its location if they narrow it to be a single lane and is exit only for those city vehicles. The building elevations, I want to focus the one at the bottom of the screen. This is as it would be seen from East Santa Fe Street. And you can see the left portion of the building is those bays with where the vehicles will be stored. The right portion, the right half, that's where the city offices would be for utilities. The building meets the transparency and all other requirements for the industrial building standards. The site has one code standard that is not met, and that is, once again, for foundation plantings. They are proposing 6.5 feet in depth, which is a 20% reduction, which is allowed under the site plan review process as an administrative adjustment. Staff supports it since they are proposing plantings along more than just 25%, which is what code requires. They're proposing 43%, so they're kind of wrapping around farther. Staff finds the site is capable of accommodating the building, use, and other site design elements. The design and arrangement of the building is consistent with good planning and landscape design. The architecture and building design uses quality materials, and the style is appropriate for the area. And finally, an administrative plat must be recorded before a building permit is issued. Staff recommends approval of the site plan for Gardner Public Utilities with the conditions in the suggested motion.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we have an applicant here that would like to speak?
Thanks. My name's Kimball Hales. I'm with Finkel Williams Architecture, and our address is 8787 Renner Boulevard, Lenexa, Kansas. We've been working with staff on this project, and we appreciate the input they've gotten from them so far. I wanted to read kind of a comment from Jeff Lemire with Gardner Utilities, who wasn't able to be here, but he mentioned that the goal of this project is to create a site that will allow the entire utilities department to be housed in one single location. Currently, staff is at 3 different locations, and the equipment is stored outside at multiple locations. This increases response time to gather equipment and parts during emergency situations for both electric and line maintenance. The proposed facility is also designed with safety in mind, this being accomplished by the pull-in, pull-out setup that has been seen in many of the similar public works, utilities, fire department, and military facilities across the nation. This will reduce the greatest risk of accidents for our crews of backing large pieces of equipment in and out of garages, parking lots, and storage facilities. So along those lines, we mentioned that I think the building complies with all of the ordinances. You know, the minor deviation on the planting, which we're trying to make it as attractive as possible. We're able to meet the transparency without any deviation, which is tricky for this type of building. But also wanted to mention just on the width of the driveway. So the department is good with having that be one way and leaving the site. So if you understand, when the trucks return, they're going to enter in through Energy Center Parkway, drive through the back of the site, and then pull forward through the garage, through those buildings. So in the morning, they can just throw open the garage doors and pull straight out. And that's why that curb cut onto Santa Fe is really pretty critical for them. And then again, thinking about large trucks and trailers and turning movements, I want to make sure that the definition of that one lane, they were fine with it being exit only because that's how they will operate. They really won't come in that direction. But we need to make sure it's wide enough to accommodate those large trucks, trailers, and turning movements as you're pulling out onto Santa Fe. So we're good with all of the recommendations from staff. We just want to clarify that the width of that drive. You know, right now I think we're showing at 36 feet. We'd be fine narrowing that some, but we just need to, we're hoping we can work with staff on that to define what that lane width is, again, considering these are larger than average vehicles. And we want to make it safe along Santa Fe Drive. And other than that, so again, Teddy Maines from Water Services here. We also have Mike from BHC Roads, who is the civil engineer on the project, if you have any questions for them. Or Mike, do you want to mention?
Yeah, happy to speak more on that driveway requirement. So as Kimball had, or I'll introduce my name and address for the record first. Michael Macris with BHC Civil Engineers and Surveyors, address 7101 College Boulevard, Overland Park, Kansas, zip code 66210. So regarding that, condition number 3, revise the access point onto East Santa Fe Street to be a single lane exit only. We do intend, this is with the intention of it being an exit only drive entrance. We do just want to clarify the language of single lane with a concern that may reduce us to a width that may create, a functional hardship on how it operates within the site. So we would like to progress this application forward, and hopefully that single lane and the width could be handled as a directive to work with staff on how we best manage that as an exit-only driveway. There's a couple layers of code kind of in play with this. The first is municipal code that requires driveway distances to be 125 feet. We meet that requirement, but then on top of that, there's the City of Gardner access management requirements that has, I'm quoting from memory, I believe it's a 245-foot distance from driveways along Santa Fe. So that is a requirement that I believe I'm going to use the word deviation, but that might not be the right technical term. It may be a waiver, would be handled at the staff level. I'm looking over at Mr. Knopick to see if I'm speaking correctly. Close enough. So we do kind of just want to clarify that requirement, and hopefully we could push this or move this application forward, but with a directive to handle with and the true design of that, the details of that design with staff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Starting it with Commissioner Cooper this time. Do you have any questions, comments? No? Okay.
Will there be any security features around the site since it's going to be housing, storing, infrastructure materials like it is currently?
So to answer that, currently, the whole facility is gated, and some of that material, some of that equipment that stays outside is going to stay in that gated area. We currently, in this iteration, because we were looking at some phasing options and also trying to get this within budget, we're not showing kind of the 2 additional bays to the west, but we had talked to the fire department about this also, that if we did have a gate that went from the end of the building to the nearest property line and gated that, there would be a fire access gate right now for that. But currently, I think the equipment that's outdoors is going to be gated and fenced as it currently is, and then all the other equipment they're going to be able to park indoor here. So there won't be a lot of stuff sitting out around in the yard in this close vicinity. And I think the intent would be to gate it and complete that when like all phases are complete.
Okay. Yeah, no, working in this industry and just knowing that setup, I was curious about that and making sure it was secure. So.
And I will add, if that comes on as a later item that's tacked on, it doesn't influence the site plan per se, but they would have to go through our fencing requirements and permits for those kinds of things. So we would have the opportunity to make sure that it's within the codes as far as whatever's proposed for those gates. As mentioned, the fire department in particular would have say in that, especially if it's a gate that comes across that access point that may require a Knox box or something like that where they've got the key sitting there that they can utilize.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Maynard?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Sosa?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner
No questions.
All right. I have
Before you go further, so I do want to clarify on the one item that was brought up a little bit ago. First of all, I want you all to understand we run the city projects through the same review process that we do with private development. There are a number of things that we work on here. In regard to the drive access point, that'll be something that will need to be demonstrated, at least to the satisfaction of Public Works. We felt comfortable with the condition that this is going to get worked out. Generally, I think what they're gonna have to show is some of the turning movements and radiuses of the various trucks and stuff like that. I don't wanna speak for Public Works, but that's where the review of this exit only kind of width of the drive is gonna be. Myself and the planner involved with this will be part of those discussions so that we're kind of there. But again, Public Works has the ability to, or the city engineer in particular, has the ability to look at those distances and separation requirements and things like that. So this would be well within the administrative rights of the staff to try to take care of this. And we would do this similarly for a private development as well.
All right. If there's no further discussion or questions, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion. After review of application 23-306-01, site plan for Gardner Public Utilities and staff report dated December 13th, 2023, the Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided the following conditions are met, items 1 through 4 in the staff report.
Second.
All right, I have a first by Commissioner Juniman and a second by Commissioner Mader. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0.
For item number 6, I'm gonna try to move us along here. So if you haven't noticed, we have a change on the Planning Commission. Commissioner McNear was elected to the City Council. When he accepted that seat or was installed into that seat on December 4th, he forfeited his seat as a Planning Commission member and thus the chair. By our bylaws, the interim chair is the vice chair that moves into that position. Commissioner Ham moved in tonight to the interim position. She'll fill that interim position until your normal election in May. So she'll be in that position and then you'll have your normal elections. But what we do need to do, because Commissioner Ham periodically may have a conflict or get ill or something like that, we do need an interim vice chair at this point. So the process is similar to any election. If somebody has a nomination and there's a willingness to make a second, I would say go through that process to, identify who you want for that interim chair. And that person would serve in that role until the May election.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Juniman.
I second.
Second.
I was going to nominate Mader.
Looks like you got it first, and we're running short on time.
You got outnumbered.
There you go. All right. I have a first by Commissioner Cooper with a second by Commissioner Sosa. All in favor of electing Commissioner Juniman as vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Interim vice chair.
Interim and vice chair? Aye. All right. Motion passes 6-0.
Abstain from that?
You can vote first.
Yeah, you didn't leave.
I'm worried about the procedures here.
If you want to entertain a motion did you do an adjournment motion?
No, I have
If you
not
wanna-
done an
If you want to
adjournment.
do that, then I'll just give you commentary after that. That way we're officially done. We can.
Okay.
Make-
I will take a motion for adjourning tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a first by Commissioner Juniman, co-second by Mader and Sosa. All in favor?
Go second.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0.
You guys have really had a